Welcome to the Safari Arie Experience with your host, Brandon McCaskill and Ari Hugerbrick, otherwise known as Safari Arie.
All right, we are live.
Okay, what are we talking about?
What are we talking about? Well,
Yeah.
I was just...
Actually, I should just, before you go, just because now we're on a new video.
Yeah.
I'm at my host in Qualicum Beach, and I'm fighting with a boxer dog with his
Big old dog.
chew toy. Yeah, so if I start shaking, that's because a dog is pulling me off the screen kind of deal. So just, it's like a disclosure that we have to give this disclosure.
If you get pulled off the screen, I don't know what we'll do. We'll call 911, but anyway, you were texting me last night asking me to come up with something to talk about, and I was just thinking about your journey as a whole, and the other day you posted something. I don't know what kind of lizard it was. You were playing with it.
Oh, an alligator lizard. Yeah.
Alligator lizard. And
Yeah.
it had me thinking about, you said you had a reptile store back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess my question was, like, what did you do before all that? Like before the reptile scene? Was that something you did as a young teenager and it turned into a store? Or?
Yeah, actually, it's kind of an interesting story, I guess you could say. Like as a child, I grew up on an orchard. And so
I didn't know
we had all sorts of fields. Well, not all sorts of fields, but we had fields where we used to catch grasshoppers and praying mantises and garden spiders. And
right.
So catching critters and creepy crawlies was kind of my favorite pastime. And,
yeah,
you know, we would go to a pond and, you know, with their dip nets and catch minnows and tadpoles and all that kind of stuff, like most kids.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say, though, probably the passion for it was probably a little bit more deeper in me than most kids. I mean, because I think most kids, they do sort of tend to outgrow it.
Yeah.
And I never did outgrow it. Excuse me. I remember as a kid, all I ever wanted in life was a pond. And my dad said, "Oh, no, because you'll turn 16 and then your life will be about cars and girls."
Yeah.
And, you know, I just continued to insist, all I want is a pond. And, you know, and sure enough, I turned 16 and that's not exactly what actually happened. In fact, I turned 16. I actually still remember, I believe it was I think it would be grade 9, not grade 10, grade 9. Cause I think I took biology in grade 9.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I do believe it was biology. Like if you recall, I'm assuming it's sort of the same still, but the science classes, how they had 2 seats, you had your lab table or whatever. And and 2 people sat at the same table kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, I just happened to be sitting with this other guy. And actually that's the thing. I'll just sort of backtrack. Probably my biggest passion as a kid was turtles. I love turtles. I just could not get enough of them, but I could never figure out how to catch the things, because you see them in the pond and they're on, because they're in a pond and they're on the you know, on a piece of driftwood or whatever out there. And as soon as you get within 30 feet, they're in the water. And it's like, well, like, how do you even get close to them? Because they don't let you get within 30 feet of them. And so anyways, somehow me and this one guy, we ended up sitting beside each other, and he kind of casually mentioned, I forget how it came up, because obviously this was grade 9 or 10, 50 years ago. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I go catching turtles all the time." And I was just like,
Oh, really?
Like I just about fell off my seat. Like I just could not believe it. And so we became like best friends, like instantly. And then basically that's every weekend or on the summers he showed me how to catch turtles. And that was the thing is at the same time, my parents were they were building, they're renovating in the basement. They're going to give me a bedroom in the basement. Mm-hmm. And as soon as they said they were going to give you a bedroom in the basement, I said, well, then I'm getting my pond. And we actually, we actually put a pond in the basement. Oh, really? Now, what it was basically a 4x8 floor space, just like a sheet of plywood. Mm-hmm. And then we just put so basically it had a base of 4x8, and then we put 2.5, 3 foot walls, plywood walls around it. And then I put a kiddie pool in one end. So it was 8 feet long by 4 feet wide. And so the kiddie pool was kind of a circular 4 feet by 4 feet area, kind of. And so half was the water and half was land.
Yeah.
And I got rocks and I made waterfalls. And anyways, I mean, my passion for reptiles just escalated like through the roof. I think within, 2-3 years, I had over 50 species of basically turtles. My parents were not big fans of snakes, but snakes did come in the near future, but they had no problem with me having turtles. And so I just kept acquiring all these different species of turtles. I even had a few lizards, had a few amphibians. I actually had a lizard, a sailfin dragon lizard, not very well known by most people, but it's sort of like an iguana, but it's from Asia. Yeah. And anyways, it actually ran loose in the bedroom because I had all these tropical plants in the pond. And so it would just sort of hang out around the pond. Yeah. And because it was an older house, it was one of those foundations where it was all old rocks. Yeah. Like the rock foundation. Oh, yeah. So it was a really great backdrop. And so the lizard just sort of hung kind of along that back edge. And it was really weird because like a lot of lizards, they get down on the ground and they disappear or whatever, but this was an arboreal lizard. So it always liked to hang up high. Yeah. And so, I actually had a 3.5 foot lizard that actually ran loose in the bedroom. And like I said, I had about 50 different species of assorted reptiles. Most of them were turtles. I actually did eventually convince them to let me have a snake. That was a huge negotiation. It was kind of funny. I actually had to write they wrote a contract that I had to sign that I could only have one snake. I could only have one snake. I could never ask for any other snakes. The snake couldn't get over 4 feet long, couldn't be poisonous, which of course.
That's fair.
And so never ask for another one. Couldn't be more than 4 or 5 feet. Yeah. It couldn't be poisonous. So I actually decided to get a Colombian rainbow boa, which very beautiful snake. And then what happened was, because this is the thing, my parents, they'd always say, okay, no more, because I was always bringing more stuff in. But that's the thing, when you have 50 animals, they don't know what, it'd be 3 weeks later, they like, that guy looks new. It's like, I've had him for 3 weeks. And it's like, then what are they going to do, right? Because you're also a teenager. There's not much they can tell you, And so anyways, so I get the snake, and 3 weeks later, my dad goes to Holland.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, And then by then I'm, I'm working part-time at a pet store, reptile store. So they get a king snake in. And so I bring the king snake home. And then I ended up trading that snake for a hognose snake. That one I was having trouble getting it to eat. And then an African rock python came into the pet store. And those are my most favorite snakes. If you ever look at a book on snakes, and there's those photos of all these exotic snakes, and there's usually a photo of one of those snakes eating an antelope in Africa. Okay, that's an African rock python. Dear. And they're actually pretty dangerous. They have actually killed people. Yeah. They get like 20 plus feet, and they're aggressive, and they're very, very active. Yeah. And anyways, this African rock python came in that wasn't aggressive, but it was very active. And I just instantly fell in love with it. And I smuggled that into my bedroom, 7 foot. Gosh. It was 7 foot long. And I remember it was like 2 or 3 weeks later, my mom comes up to me, there's a new snake in your room, and it looks like it's longer than 4 feet. And I was like, no, he's curled up in a ball. He's like it's like 1.5 feet by 1 foot.
Wow. That's really interesting.
So, my parents really didn't have too much control over me. The good thing was it wasn't like I was into drugs or alcohol. I was into reptiles. You know what I mean?
It's like their restrictions is what caused your passion to grow. Because
oh yeah.
That's kind of how I learned how to play guitar, because my brother just wouldn't let me play his guitar. He said, just don't touch it. So I would sneak in and play it. And so that made me love it.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So, so I mean, I had this basement full, in fact, I actually grew outside the bedroom. Yeah. And then basically what happened is when I was 18, I don't know if I got kicked. I think I got kicked out when I was 18. So then I moved to Hamilton from Grimsby, and everything followed. And then basically what happened is this store that I was working at in Hamilton, it was an exotic reptile store. And anyways, the owner was, not that it matters anymore, but the owner was a bit of a drunk. And so anyways, he kind of all of a sudden one day turned on me. And, so, he was drunk, and he said, get out, get your stuff out, whatever. Wow. And I was, and actually at the time was when I actually just got my first full-time job somewhere else. So job wise, it was an easy transition kind of deal.
Yeah.
But then what happened is I actually, then that store actually went out of business within weeks or months or whatever, like it's a long time ago. So I actually started selling reptiles out of my apartment, because I had this apartment in Hamilton, and I actually started selling out of my apartment. And then what happened is I didn't get a vehicle for another year or so. It was my first vehicle. I didn't get till I was like 19 or whatever. And it was a cargo van, of all things, as your first vehicle. And anyways, these people that were supplying me with some of the reptiles that I was selling, they kind of said, well, if you take on your day off, if you go around and visit pet stores and sell reptiles wholesale, you'll make more money doing that than you will at your full-time job at the bakery that I was working at. I was working at my grandparents' bakery at the time. And so basically what happened is on my day off, I drove, actually I had my first run was a Barrie run. I basically went up to 400 all the way up to Barrie, Ontario. And it was, actually I started making more money. I would pack up all these animals, and we had dry goods and feeders, and I would just visit these pet stores, and I would show them what I had, and anything they wanted to buy, they could buy, and then brought it all back and paid for whatever I sold. And it was only a matter of 6 months or whatever, I think it was. And I ended up basically quitting my job and started wholesaling reptiles. Wow. And that was in 95. Yeah, I think that was in 1995 I started. 1995, my first company was Reptiles Unlimited. Wow. Selling wholesale reptiles.
And then at that point?
What's that?
How old were you at that point?
Well, 1995. So that was 25 years ago, and I'm 47. So it's
too big a math for me.
Yeah. That would have been 20. Well, because I bought a house. I bought a house right before my 20th birthday. And so I was in my house when I started the wholesaling. So I would have been 20. I would have been getting closer to 21-ish. I guess in 1995, if I got that right. Wow. And then basically I quit my full-time job and just started wholesaling reptiles all over Ontario. And then in 1999, I actually opened up a store. Basically, I came across this new landlord or whatever, and he said he'd be willing, because it was a retail building. And I was just trying to get warehouse space. And he said, we'll rent out to you, but we're actually trying to clean up the neighborhood. And, so we would prefer to get retail tenants. Yeah. And I opened my wallet up, and I had 5 credit cards. And thing was at the time I was doing good for dry goods, and I was doing good for feeders, but my livestock selection was very minimal compared to my competition, because what was happening is I was growing exponentially, but the people that originally got me into the business, they were actually shrinking their business, and they could not keep up with my demand. And so in the end, my livestock started to shrink. And so I thought, I set up my wallet, and I had 5 credit cards. Yeah. And I thought, well, if I open up a store, that'll force me to invest into livestock. Yeah. And so I just said, okay. And that was actually, as crazy as it sounds, that was my business plan. I opened up my wallet, and I had 5 credit cards, and I said, okay, basically right on the spot. And opened up, because basically opened the store in 1999, I think in the fall of 99. And then I sold it in 2002. And that would have been the height of my quote unquote empire.
Yeah.
I had like 13 employees, full-time and part-time.
Mm-hmm.
And that year we did $1 million in sales.
Really?
And that was all because I had 5 credit cards in my wallet. Yeah. So yeah.
That type of thing that's available for you to go back to at any point. Right now?
What do you mean?
Like, is that market, it's still the same as it was back?
Oh, no, I don't know. I am like, well, it's like, so like, I mean, I was doing wholesale retail.
Yeah.
And we did educational reptile shows. We actually had a party room where we did birthday parties for schools. And
oh, cool.
Well, mostly it was birthday parties, but we also did schools and daycares, cool. All this and that. You know what? Well, first of all, that was the thing is, you know, a lot of people like, why aren't you doing that, or what happened? Like, why'd you get out of it, kind of deal. And what it was, and it's a whole other longer, much longer story. But you know, when I found that when I was talking to people, I always used to somehow mention, but I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And I found myself saying that over and over again. And it's like, then I kind of realized it's like, if I keep saying this, then this must not be it. Because the other thing is obviously I was experiencing a level of success. Like I said, in 2002, I did like $1 million in sales, which I'm sure would have made me the biggest reptile company in Ontario.
Yeah.
And like I said, with 13 employees. But the thing is, you know, with success comes that kind of paranoia of protecting your assets and protecting your interests.
Yeah.
And, you know, and before you know it, all of a sudden you're in this place where you actually don't know how you got there, and you don't know if this was even where you were supposed to be. And so I literally, basically, I actually walked away from the entire thing. That being said, I didn't have a plan, and that was a big mistake. I think that was just, it's funny because I've actually read case studies kind of deal of just when someone who's young kind of reaches a level of success, there's a naivete there that they don't know how to, you know, and I didn't have a plan. And I just had this idea that, well, if you're successful in one section of your life, then, you know, success just follows you. Like and that's the thing is it doesn't, because I thought, well, whatever happens when I leave, well, then I'll just be successful at that. And actually that's not what happened. In fact, in many ways, from a career perspective, my life just tailspinned from the day, from a career perspective, from a financial perspective, from the day I walked away from it, my life basically was a tailspin spiral to literally rock bottom. You know, that's actually ended up how I became a truck driver, was because I got so bad that it was like 5 weeks of truck training school for about $5,000. Like, it was the quickest way I could possibly change my life around, which fast forward, I was now 40.
Yeah.
So you know, my 30s from a career perspective, usually when most people are building their wealth in their 30s, I was a complete tailspin kind of deal, because I did not have a plan. And as far as like your question about going back, it's, well, one, it's reptiles, obviously you see from the posts, I mean, they are kind of my thing, but from a business perspective, it's not where I was. You know, it was an amazing experience, and I've taken many lessons from that experience. But I don't, to me, it's just, well, I mean, the industry has changed a lot to basically what they call basement breeders. You know, now there's trade shows where, you know, anyone can get in the business, and, you know, they breed one or two animals, and now they're quote unquote a business. And then at the same time, the pet industry goes in cycles where, you know, the ma pa stores, they pop up everywhere. Yeah. And then you've got some great customers, but then they disappear because the big box chains swallow them up. And then the big box chains, they kind of have policies, and they only deal with certain suppliers. And so if you're not one of those suppliers, you know, and then at the same time, it doesn't seem to be an industry that really anyone actually makes any money. Because I actually did try to get back into it, because when I was in this tailspin, I was like, I didn't know what else to do. And I thought, well, at least I knew that. So
Yeah.
I got back into it, which ended up being one of the biggest mistakes of my life in many ways. In some ways, I learned a few important lessons, but
Yeah.
in many ways, it was one of the biggest mistakes I ever did, was get back into the industry. And then I was completely struggling left, right, and center. And then I just asked myself, it's like, okay, this is an industry that nobody actually seems to make money. I mean, I did in the beginning, like with my first business,
Yeah.
but I'm looking at all these other businesses all around, and it was just kind of a crappy industry that nobody really makes any money. And I was like, well, why am I working 100 hours a week in an industry that's kind of crappy and that nobody's making money? And then I said, that's it. And I sold all my assets, and that was the end of that period. And now I have, I have other ambitions, other dreams, other goals that I think are far, far bigger, kind of deal. So
yeah, well, it's very evident that like during your bike journey here, like you can still see that you're passionate about animals and wildlife, and which is cool to see. But it's just interesting because I bet nobody's heard this story from you before. So
no, I mean, well, not publicly. I mean,
not publicly.
I mean, I have conversations with people, and I mean, it was definitely a cool time, that's for sure. I mean, I have, as far as ownership, I mean, there's pretty much, in the grand scheme of things, nothing I haven't owned, in the sense of, from hundreds of different species of snakes and lizards and tarantulas. Alligators are one of my favorites. I never really had a massive alligator, just mostly small ones that I kept small. But actually, if people recall, if they saw that video, back in May, I was in North Bay, Ontario, and at Reptile Adventure Camp, and they have like an 8-foot alligator that actually was mine. Now, when he was mine, he was only like a 1.5 feet, 2 feet. And I did not even realize that until I was actually at his place.
Oh, really?
Because me and Steve had talked every once in a while, but he was technically my official last hire.
Yeah.
As I was transitioning the store to, at the time, my store manager. So I didn't really have a whole lot of interaction with him, other than the fact he was kind of my last hire, and we would periodically cross paths for a few moments for whatever reason. Yeah. But we never really got into talking too much. And then from this ride, when I went up to visit him, because I was always curious, he always impressed me. Just his get up and go attitude, and just, And anyways, so
I'll actually link that video above if you guys haven't seen it. Just click that link and you can watch it. It's really good.
Yeah. And so when we were basically, when he was showing me his alligator room, he's got this massive, he spent like $100,000 on this building to house this alligator. I just kind of asked, I said, any chance, is that the alligator that was mine when I was selling the store to Paul? Kind of deal? Like, is this the same one? He's like, yeah, that's the same one. I was like, so that was my alligator. He was like, hey. So then I got to jump in and pick him up out of the water. That's how tame he is. Like, alligators are just the most amazing reptile that you can imagine from it. I mean, not recommended to necessarily own, because they get like 8 feet, but and they need like I said, Steve has invested $80,000 to $100,000 into this building. But it was just, I mean, we just jumped in and we got to pet him and play with him, whatever kind of deal. So, so I mean, the biggest snake I ever had was, I think, a 13-foot Burmese python. So I've had all the big stuff, and I love tarantulas.
Yikes.
Yeah, no, I love tarantulas. And so, I mean, when I go to Belize, when I go to my home in Belize, first thing I do is I go reptile hunting, for sure. So it's definitely a passion, but, my thing, I think my true passion for what what I call my legacy work is what I like to do is, in the future, planted a million trees. Right. In particular, rainforest and jungle and all that, because the way I see it, it's like, without trees, none of us even survives. Like, we need trees for habitat and this and that. So, my passion is actually planting trees so that these animals can continue to exist, kind of deal. So yeah, I think let's put it this way, you know, black and white. Do I want to own a quote unquote reptile store where we sell reptiles as pets, or do I want to plant 1 million trees to preserve their habitat? You know what I mean? Like it's kind of, it's a no-brainer. I can still love my reptiles, but have a bigger vision for, you know, what the planet needs, kind of
You'll
deal.
be really cool. You're talking here and it's kind of giving me ideas for you. So you can thank me later. Because you take tons of pictures, right? As you're going, and you're always, any animal you come across, you're taking pictures. What if at the end of your journey, you put together like this encyclopedia of, you know, your journey and all the animals? You know, like all the scientific backgrounds to all these animals and species. And
well, it's actually funny because, you know what, compared to my competition, I knew the least about anything. I think my secret was just my drive and my drive to work hard and my drive for excellence. Reputation and excellence is very, very high on my priority. And it's, if you have a high standard of excellence, then if you have a high standard of excellence and you work hard, then it's only a matter of time before success follows you. And so, so compared to my competition, I knew the least about anything in the grand scheme of things. And that being said, I mean, it's, you know, it'd be cool if I run across that. I mean, and I guess in chances are there's probably going to find quite a few between here and there, but you know, it is still few and far between the animals you kind of see. I mean, it's, you know, you just sometimes you just get lucky that, there it is, kind of deal. But it's
very interesting.
We'll see where all the photos come from or where they go.
No, that's cool. I was wondering that last night, and I can't believe I haven't asked that before. We've talked for however many months.
No, it's just a childhood. Cool. Like I said, I never outgrew, like most kids, you know, like, most kids outgrow that kind of stuff. And I never outgrew it. In high school, I always wanted to be a zoologist. But then I realized, you know, it was funny because I would always, you know, those aptitude tests, I always made it so it was like zoologist. But then the thing is I realized it's like, hold on a second, you actually have to go to school to be a zoologist. And I hate school. And academically, I'm just not that intelligent from an academic perspective. And it's like, how do I become a zoologist if I don't, I'm just like, I mean, I was like a C-, C+ student kind of deal for the most part. And it's like, that's not going to get me to be a zoologist. And then when I realized actually in many ways, what I kind of evolved into or transitioned to is more of the entrepreneurial perspective of things. Like that's the thing is like I was self-employed and I enjoyed my business. But I tend to basically look at everything, literally everything in life through an entrepreneurial lens for whatever reason, you know, which is kind of weird because I don't really have a business, but everything I look through, like everything I look at.
Self-reliant.
Yeah, everything I look at, you know, from a billboard to advertisement, it's like, you know, that's actually a good ad or no, they actually did a horrible job on that ad or, you know, or how you improve a business or whatever, or, you know, a side hustle or whatever. I always look at everything from an entrepreneurial, through an entrepreneurial lens. And so I don't know if that's really what a zoologist does kind of do. And that's the other thing is getting back to the trees. It's like that passion actually only, I'm going to use the word matured while I was in the truck. So that was something that kind of matured. All of a sudden, it was one of those things all of a sudden one day I realized it was like, the way I tell people is it's like there's these little seeds being planted all the way actually from that guy that got me into the turtles. He actually became a tree nut. For, I don't know, like at least at that time, it was literally, he actually transitioned to trees and he would actually quiz me. We would, you know, we'd be going on our way to ponds or to rivers to catch stuff. And he'd start quizzing me on trees. And I was like, dude, I don't care about trees. They're all green. But it's like, I still remember those memories of him quizzing me on like, look at the bark, look at the leaves, you know, this and that. And then it was just, kind of from that period on, every couple of years, like a new seed would be planted.
Yeah.
You know, I remember being in Belize and we went to cut a particular tree down to use that particular wood that the tree produced.
Yeah.
But it was actually what it was a royal palm. Those are those palm trees that like go up like 70, 100 feet, and then they've just got a few leaves on the end.
Yeah.
So you see them in like Miami Vice kind of movies. Anyways, in the jungle, so we went and cut one of these trees down. Well, it's like 75, 100 feet up. And what it is what happens is vines grow everything around everything, because that's how everything is reaching for the sun.
Yeah.
And so what happened is we cut this tree down, and when it fell, it literally put this massive hole in the canopy. And I was sick to my stomach. I honestly was sick to my stomach just to see. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's the jungle. It just grows back up. Like 6 weeks later, you wouldn't even know that there was anything there. But it was just this hole in the sky that was. I was actually physically sick to my stomach. And I still remember that memory. And that was back in 1997. And so, you know, that was another seed. And so all these little different small seeds have been planted, all these little stories that could go on for hours. And then all of a sudden it was probably, well, I'm 47, got in the truck at 40. So I'm going to say like probably when I was like 42, 43, all of a sudden it just popped in my head. It's like, oh, this is what I want to do when I grow up. I want to plant trees. I want to, you know, raise seedling trees for reforestation of rainforest and jungle.
Yeah.
But the thing is I was working 80 to 90 hours a week in the truck. And then with how this ride all of a sudden happened very suddenly, I had to focus on getting this ride going along with working the 80 hours a week. So the truth of the matter is I have this passion and this dream for trees, but I don't know the first thing about them. Because I've never had a chance to actually read about them or study them or anything, because like I said, I was working 80, 90 hours a week. And then this bike ride became a reality, and it became the 100% focus.
Yeah. And
now I'm pedaling and I can barely keep up with the work I'm doing now. So the truth of the matter is I know absolutely nothing about trees. I know nothing about it, but you know, mark my words, something's going to happen, kind of deal. And, you know, and that was the thing is I was going to initially use part of this ride for some tree research, but then, and I actually went to a one tree planted satellite location in Montreal. They're actually a US based organization, but they have a satellite site in Montreal. And I actually went to visit them and hung out for about an hour, and I asked them different questions, because it's like I thought, well, this is going to be my way to educate myself about trees along my bike ride. And so I started, but then COVID hit, and then everything shut down. And everything's sort of basically been shut down, and then, you know, the whole hosting thing was, you know, obviously full blown part of the ride, and so it's just I really haven't had a chance to really delve into the whole tree thing yet. It's definitely on the radar, and, you know, maybe moving into the States, definitely when I go to Central South America, getting into the rainforest, the plan was always to try to volunteer at some of these different places where they're planting trees, because, you know, these organizations are already working in countries like Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, Peru, wherever. And so the plan is to see if I can connect with some of these places, maybe volunteer for a week or two and get my hands dirty. And then that would be kind of my education. And then that way, you know, when the ride is over, then I can go home to Belize and start my own tree farm. Because I have 40 acres down there. And the plan is to build a nursery for raised seedling trees. So I mean, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's just like, got to get this bike ride done first. But, you know, it's been an interesting kind of journey about, you know, how it started from reptiles and evolved into trees.
That's really cool.
Just got to get this bike ride out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Another 2 years, 2.5.
Depends. I'm going pretty slow. I'm going real slow.
Might as well make it 5. Let's make it 5.
Might as well make it 5. Hopefully the world will still be here.
Yeah, probably not. Oh, awesome. Cool. I think that was a good conversation for today.
Yeah. Wow.
What time is it?
You
What time we
impressed
got?
me. I have no idea, but I'm sure we've rambled on pretty.
34. That wasn't bad.
Yeah. No, I was impressed that you. Um, yeah, I wasn't too sure where you were going to go with this.
Cool. We'll wrap this up for now and tie it with a bow. Boom.
Yeah. Boom.
And we'll set it there. Awesome.
Yeah.
Good stuff.